Hi, my name is Gunny Gundrum. I have a large family here in Grafton. We were born in a farmhouse right nearby and wandered these hills and dales and fished most of the lakes in the Grafton Park. I think some of my fondest memories, the park itself, is its construction. I was an adult at that time when I met the engineer in charge of building the park. His name was Vince Jowett, and he lived in one of the residence here on the park that the state had purchased from the owners. And with Vince and his friend, the contractor who actually won the bid and built the park was Pin Oaks Construction from Red Hook, New York, and his name was his name was John Jimenez, and they really had their heart into building this, and through their vision, I believe this is what we have. They always argued for the best. Even the sand from the beach, the original sand came from Shasbury, Vermont. John and Vince both lived here in town while they were constructing it, and they were loved dearly by their employees, both men and women who helped build the park.
Hey, welcome to Grafton. It's been almost 50 years since I've been on the beach here. We were trying to talk about the opening day. We knew the beach was going to open any day, so we did a presentation for Channel 10 News out of Albany. So we did a simulated rescue. It was myself, Buzz Jones, and Sandy Town. So we did the filming, looking out towards the beach here, and we did our simulated thing. I believe I was the victim, and Buzz and Sandy were the rescuers that had to bring me in.
He didn't really need rescuing. So Sandy and I basically went out. We did a real traditional rescue. We swam out together because ideally it's always safest and best to go in a pair. And I basically took Mike's right hand with my right hand, and in the process of pulling him, he spins over on his back, and in we went. It was pretty simple, you know. And I don't know, did we actually carry out?
I think you dragged me up to the water and left me there.
Yeah.
Probably there all day long, too. They forgot all about me. So it was a great simulated rescue to the point where I was on the beach and then I was forgotten about.
Well,
But
Sandy Town was an athlete and strong and willing to do whatever it took. You know, she was like one of the guys in terms of performance, and we were longtime friends. So the three of us were longtime friends. So
almost the three amigos.
Yeah.
But we had a great time. We did the rescue. We were thrilled. The park was going to open. We opened. And it was like nobody here. Like nobody knew Albany, Troy, Schenectady, the Capital District. They really didn't know what Grafton Lakes State Park was. So 1971 was pretty much a quiet year here. I mean, it was so slow. The lifeguards cut grass. We painted. There was two colors at Grafton, which you might know about. It was garbage can green and bathroom brown. So it was only two specific colors that we were allowed to paint while we were up here.
Before the park actually opened, we had to take a test. And the test was at Thatcher Park, I think, right?
I took mine here.
Oh, did you? I just remember going up to Thatcher Park, and they had a pool, and we had to swim in this pool that was absolutely freezing. And then we also had to take the written test, right? Did you take the written test?
Yep.
Comparatively at the time, the pay was very good. And I was hired right off the bat as the assistant head lifeguard. And the reason for that, I think, was because of Bob.
And also you had the best speed in the pool.
Yeah, well, and I tested well, and because I had taken a lot of lifeguarding and first aid courses, so my test results were really strong. And then I swam faster than everybody else, so you're in. And probably nowadays it'd be more criteria because I was only 17 years old. when I took that job. The fellow who was the head lifeguard above me, his name was Eric Peterson, and he was really great to me, a really good guy. Bob Perkins was just amazing to me. He was a phenomenal boss, and really took care of me and made sure that his tasks were just say, I want you to do this, and we would all just do it. But he didn't burden us with a lot of micromanaging. He let us be the lifeguards and take care of things. So anyways, when the park opened, Eric left, and I got to be the head lifeguard again at age 17. I was by far the youngest head lifeguard in the state. I wound up mainly staying towards the first aid station because I could see everything. As far as the beach is concerned, we always used single chairs, so that was one person to a chair. But I asked Bob Perkins, who was the superintendent, to make a double chair in the center. And the reason was I would go down to see. I didn't actually sit in the chair. I didn't do lifeguarding duty. I was the head lifeguard, so I was more like a supervisor. But I would go down there and I'd have to stand the whole time, so I asked him to make a double, so I always had a seat down there. I changed the whistle system. One long one meant rescue.
Oh, that was the fast one?
Yeah, and the typical one is 3 blasts, but people kept screwing it up, so I just said one long solid blast and point where you're going and go. And it worked well. I thought the one blast was a little less of a challenge. While people are trying, they're all excited and they were like blowing on the whistle. It's just one and go. There were very few rescues, but there was one rescue that I remember where the fella came running down the beach and literally dove from like just at the edge of the water. And by the time he landed, it was about this deep. And he got smashed up pretty good.
So he fell down, broke, sprained, whatever he did to his neck. So we had to get the backboard out. We had done a lot of training with the backboard. So all the lifeguards came down, got the backboard out, the plywood backboard, brace behind the neck, straps everywhere, immovable. Then we lifted him out of the water. We brought him up in the volunteer ambulances out of Grafton, which have always been great to help us out in the state park here. Came in, we loaded him up, and off he went.
I'll tell you, the lifeguards here were really, really competent. Yeah. You know, they knew that it was a serious job, but we worked hard and played hard as well. You know, it was a time when people were very social. There was no cell phones to stay in touch. We stayed in touch by being here and making arrangements while we were here as to what we were going to do.
Hence the reason why there's no pictures. You never had a camera.
No.
So I have no pictures from here. I have no lifeguard pictures.
But, you know, the other thing, too, is that, you know, the drinking age was younger then. So we would be able to go to, there were bars in Grafton. There are no bars now in Grafton. So we'd go to the Pine View or whatever and have beers afterwards.
Or one of the lifeguards owned a motorboat, and we go water skiing afterwards.
Yep.
On one of the other lakes in Grafton. So it was a pretty good social group.
Yep.
So we had fun together and we worked together.
Hi, I'm Kathy Sheehan. I'm the Rensselaer County and Troy City historian, and standing here on the beach in Grafton Lakes State Park celebrating the 50th anniversary. And it's really quite wonderful for me because this was a place that I came to, I think, the second day that they were open. I remember all the traffic going up Route 2 was really quite amazing to see all the cars turning in here, and this huge parking lot was just chock full. Great day, and came up here so many days with my sisters and my cousin, and we were just hanging out here on the beach as teenagers because I was all of 16 years old in 1971 when the park first opened. So we loved this big sandy beach, and of course it was a great place to people watch, and we were all wanting to see who were the other kids from high schools that were coming in, and it was just a ball. It was a whole new place to go. Standing here over at the boat launch, and it was my first time kayaking was on Grafton Lakes. Came here and rented the kayak and the canoe. We went out, went all the way up, of course, around to the point of the lake. At that point, they only wanted you to go about halfway out. Coming in, the thing that I love about Grafton is that there's no motorized boats, because I'm a little skittish. I mean, I can swim, but I really didn't want to have to deal with boats swamping. And so this is why coming up here has always just been so attractive, to come up and rent kayaks and the canoes and go into the lake. And I love that it's kind of the history of the lake too, that this was Troy's water supply. Having grown up here, this was the water supply before the Tomhannock Reservoir, and that if need be, it's still here, so that this water stays nice and clean and it's not being polluted with gasoline and things like that, is just, I think, an even better perk to the many things that are up here in Grafton.
So my name is Therese Goyette. Now I was Therese Milady, and I worked in the concession stand in 1975 with 4 of my high school friends and 1 of her friends and a couple local girls from Grafton. And we worked behind the concession stand. We made cotton candy, made walkaway sundaes, and just really had a great time doing it.
And I'm Liz Medvets, and I was here with Therese in 1975. We were here for the whole summer and working in the concession stand, having lots of fun doing it. And we did hot dogs and hamburgers, and the cotton candy was a big thing that we learned how to do. Our other friends, we were pretty close with our high school friends, so we had a really great time. And we had other friends that were lifeguards as well while we worked here. So there's Lori, Linda, me, Therese, and Mary Beth. And so the 4 of us were in high school together, and Lori's connection with Linda was from nursing school. So we jumped at the chance to be working together, and we really stayed friends all those years. So we did things together growing up, and while we were here, we were working together and laughing at some of the things that happened. You know, the French fries were a little too done or not done enough.
And we could cover for each other. I remember wanting to go visit one of my college friends and going for a couple days and deciding I want to stay longer, so I would call here and say, okay, who can work a couple more days? I'm going to stay. So that was good that we were all friends. We could ride together, take turns driving, and help each other get rides.
Paid better than babysitting.
Yes, that's what we said. And it was just like, at that time, it was a job that you could count on every single day, you know, and whatever. There was a schedule, so we didn't work every day, but it was guaranteed work, and it was a fun place to come, and it was for the whole summer, so you didn't have to worry about, you know, only working for a couple weeks.
I can't remember what we were paid, but we remember babysitting was like 50 cents an hour back in 1974 or 5.
Right, and I think minimum wage was around $1.80, so I think that's probably what we made.
And these are the aprons that we wore. So this was kind of our uniform. We had a white blouse on and these, and we were behind the counters waiting on our customers that came in from the beach or wherever. So here was one of our stations for cooking and things, and we had the French fryolators here, all filled in. So if you wanted a hot dog, step right up, and here's where we cooked it.
And the other fun part of our job was making things. So, you know, to start the morning when we got here, somebody would use the grill and make a few hot dogs and hamburgers just to have and keep them in the warmer. But once we got the hang of it, we loved the cotton candy. You just, you know, used your arm and made it as big as you wanted to. And the walkaway sundaes were my favorite. We had some kind of, maybe a pint of vanilla ice cream that you had to cut in 4 pieces and then put it in the cones and roll it in the chocolate and roll it in the nuts. So that was my favorite thing to do. I didn't like the grill, but I liked the walkaway sundaes.
The part I didn't like was cleaning the oil in the French fry fryer. So every night we'd have to do that and clean the grill. And I seem to have gotten that job quite often. I was like, Then they would come and the lines would be pretty long because we would be making the French fries, the hamburgers, hot dogs. Everything was kind of fresh when we were doing it. And so they'd be standing in line, and overhead was the list of things that you could pick that was on the menu for what we were selling. So then people would get up to the counter and would say, "Can I help you?" And they'd go, "I don't know what I want." I'd be like, "You've been in line for 20 minutes now, and you still don't know what you want." It was just so funny to say. All that time you were complaining about waiting in line, but you didn't know what you wanted when you got up to the counter.
Another thing I remembered, she mentioned the lifeguards, is there was a lot of camaraderie. People who worked at the park, we took good care of the lifeguards when they came in for a burger. We'd like make them a double burger or whatever, and we rode with them because most of us lived in Hoosick Falls, so we needed a ride to and from every day, so we carpooled a little bit, and that was a big kind of excitement because one lifeguard in particular was probably 3 or 4 years older than us, so it was kind of a thrill to ride with him to work.
So in the mornings, we'd have a really nice view of the beach with nobody on it because we were here early. And the lifeguards would have to go out and do their daily swim. So we always had a good view of the guys in their swim trunks going out, what muscles they had, and out doing their swim every day. So it was kind of fun watching that.
Yeah, we certainly had a beautiful view, to look out at this lake every day. That was great. One other story I remember happened right here, or it ended right here. We were coming in the park in the morning. We used to just hold up our red apron and wave it to the guy or the girl who was working at the gate. Or they might not even be working yet, depending what time we came. But one day I came through and probably was in a hurry and didn't wave my red apron. And I got almost right to the driveway here, and the park police were following me. So I got out of my car, and the park police got out of his car and came up to me. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I work here. But for a minute, I just felt like, he was chasing me, that I did something wrong. So every other time after that, I would wave my red apron at the guys at the gate.
They knew. And it's pretty funny how the inside of this concession stand hasn't really changed in all the years since 1975. It's pretty much the same as we remembered it when we were working here back then.
Yeah, it just was a nice working environment. It was just fun to do and fun to be here. And every day was a little different. So we enjoyed it.
I'm Bob Davis, probably the longest tenured guy here now. I worked here, I think, in 1975 to 79, which was like 5 years back in the day, under the tutelage of Bob Perkins, Ed Bly, Pete Beaudry, Dick Protis, and a few other guys. And this park was really my first job. I was 18 years old. I learned from some really good people to take your job seriously, do your best, and they really formulated kind of the way I live. True. Bob Perkins was amazing. He was my age. I'm going to be 65 years old. I think he was in his 60s. We had dirty, rotten jobs here. He would be right in the middle of it with you, and that really impressed me. Eddie Bly, we would call him Captain Bly. He was a maintenance foreman. Couldn't ask for a better guy. I was the park garbage man for the first year. I think there was 8 or 10 of us, the Goyer brothers, myself, John Baudy. When I first started, there was no rabbit run or deer field. That was in the process of being thought of and eventually built. The second year we were here, Bob went to John Baudy and I and asked us to be like the park rangers. And I was like, no, I don't want to do that. No, I got to talk to people. And he goes, yeah, that's what you're going to do. And I said, no, I really don't want to do that. And he said, well, you're gonna. He goes, that's going to be your job this summer. And John and I became the park rangers. And wow, what a great job. I walked around the park. I must have put 100,000 miles. We had our own truck. We had a fancy truck that said Ranger on it. It was really a cool job. And for the next 4 years, that's what I did. We went over. Willie Michaels was an interesting character. He was one of our maintenance guys. He lived over by Dyke and Pond, lived in a 2-room house, I think, with 12 kids. Had no running water. Really, really cool guy. I don't know how he did it. God bless him. We were picking up trash. Willie he started screaming and hollering, and he goes, oh my God, skunks, skunks, skunks. Well, this little skunk fell into the garbage can. So threw the top on the garbage can. They threw me in the back of the pickup truck with the garbage can and the cover on it, and we were going to bring the skunk over to Johnson Road, which is over by the Dunham Res, to release the skunk unharmed and all that kind of good stuff. So we finally got rid of that. We got it over there unharmed and dumped it out, took off. That was that. So on a Sunday, we'd march people all the way down to the gate, all around the jug handle. People would park. You'd be here at 7 o'clock, and there would be people lined up all the way around the jug handle, all the way down Route 2, waiting to get in here on a hot Sunday morning. And our job was to be traffic guys, this, that, and the other thing. And so that was always an interesting weekend. It was very busy. And then the other stuff was just normal every day. You know, people getting along with people and trying to keep dogs off the beach, frisbees off the beach, stupid stuff like that. In 1979, middle of summer, they sent me a letter and asked if I wanted to be a firefighter in the city of Troy. In the Troy Fire Department, I put almost 28 years in. 2006, December, I retired from the fire department. So I came back up here. Tom Conklin was the boss. The park has changed considerably. Obviously, the people have changed. It's actually a fantastic place. The people up here take good care of me. I know I'm the old guy now. I'm going to be 65 in a couple months, and they take really good care of me.
Grafton is a place to visit for sure, but it's been a place to visit for the last 200 years. So Grafton was known for its beautiful lakes and scenery and fresh air long before the state park. A building built, I believe, back in the 1880s, if not earlier, and it was the Grafton Hotel. There were several different names over the years, but it was built by the people of Grafton. If you look in the buildings at the park now, and you see these large timbers, which are beautiful, that's what these buildings were made out of, except they were hand-hewed timbers. And the patroon wanted to develop Grafton, and he built had the hotel built. Also at the same time, they built the mill that stood below Mill Pond. The remnants of that are still there. And we were always fascinated with the stories about the settlers who came here and dammed up some of the ponds and made them into bigger lakes, and what they went through, and the mill nearby, and down near the mill on Mill Pond, allegedly there was an Indian cemetery. And for all us kids here in town, we were all fascinated in trying to find the Indian cemetery. Sherm Barnhart, the proprietor of the Grafton store, told us, oh yeah, it's right up there by Mill Pond. You go around Mill Pond and it's on the back side. Well, and we searched and searched. We had a very active Boy Scout troop here in Grafton back in the early 50s. And Helen Elliott was a neighbor and friend who was a fire observer, I believe her title might have been, at the Dickinson Tower here in the park. And she somehow got the Boy Scouts involved in clearing some of the trails here in the park, mostly the trails that she used to ride to work on her horse. I remember going up, I believe, with the troop, with the Grafton Boy Scout troop, and getting a good tour by Helen of where she worked there in the tower.
Hi, my name is Linda Lavway, and I'm the granddaughter of Helen Elliott. And in 1943, she was approached to work at the fire tower. And to her, it was the most important job that anybody could do, let alone have a woman actually doing this job. prior to her doing this job, it was always a male job. But they just started to run out of people with the war. So why can't a woman do this job? And so on the first day that Helen started, she said in her book, and she did tell us how terrifying it was. The first day she stood in front of this tower and just looked up. And it was exciting, it was terrifying, it was new, it was all these emotions all wrapped up into one. Every single day, on the way up and on the way down, she counted her 82 steps of the 60-foot tower. So everything was really simple. She would go up with her binoculars, her little canteen or her thermos, and that's where she would spend her entire day. If you were, for me, I was a child, so if you didn't ask to come down every little while because you were hungry, because you had to go to the bathroom, because you wanted to get crayons, you took what you needed with you, and from the time you went up, you would probably not be coming down until noon. So that's when you restocked, used the outhouse, and went back up for the rest of the day. And this is where Helen spent her entire day. I'm sure she did venture down once in a great while for a very short amount of time. And she has, as you can see, she had such a vast view. And she would just stay here for the day with her binoculars, and she would look for signs of a fire. And after time, she knew, just based on the smoke, how much smoke, the color of the smoke, she really got good at pinpointing exactly where the fire was, what type of fire it was, and then she would make her phone call on her very old-fashioned black rotary phone. So she would have to call the authorities and make people aware that, yes, definitely, where there's smoke, there's fire. At that time when she started, the fire department was not formed yet. So the Grafton Volunteer Fire Department was actually formed when they really came to the conclusion, based on the number of calls that she made, that a fire department was needed in Grafton.
One of the other aspects, of course, about having such a nice tall spot, not only for observing for forest fires, was also during World War II and through the Cold War period of civil defense, where you needed to be able to have a high enough point to be able to mark and watch the planes that were coming over. Were we being invaded? Who knows? And there was an entire line of reasoning why we needed to keep the fire towers.
One of the things that gave her a sense of pride was every single morning she climbed to the top of the fire tower and she would put out the American flag. And that to her meant a lot of different things. It meant it was her freedom. It was the love of her job. It was the love of her country. So all of those thoughts could happen in the short, maybe 60 seconds it took for her to actually raise that flag. So while we were up here, I don't recall that I would ever be with her when the weather was really questionable. But when she would be up here alone and there was a storm would break out, there was thunderstorms, there was lightning, she would leave the tower. It was dangerous. It just was a very unsafe place for her to be. There was even a wind factor. So if the wind was blowing at a certain speed and it really became questionable as to how hard the cab would be moving and shaking, she would then leave. In the 18 years that she came to the fire tower, traveling was always very interesting. For the first part of her experiences at the tower, she would take her horse. And, most of us we can't imagine what that's like. I mean, we get up, our alarm goes off, we get up, we get prepared for work, we get in our car and we drive 8 to 10 miles to work, and that seems like a distance. She did her 8 miles on horseback. So she got up very early, she had to feed her horse, she had her coffee, and I know she was always excited every morning. She got the saddle on her horse, she got herself ready, she had her fresh water, she had whatever she needed that wasn't already stocked in the cabin, and she started her 8-mile venture to the tower. So right now we're standing on the site of where the old cabin was, and this was one of the original steps to the cabin. And as you can see, the cabin is long gone, but we do have a picture of the cabin. And over here, a piece that's still left would be the old water holding tank. So there wasn't a well. There was no simple way to get water, but every time it rained, we had water. The water wasn't for drinking, but more for cooking, washing, just a water containment system. The inside of the cabin, as I can remember as a child, was very simplistic. There was an old sofa, and the cabin always had a little bit of a damp smell to it. So you walked in the cabin and you knew you were there, but it was really clean and everything in it was only what you needed. There were no extras. There was no real comforts. She had a little front porch that was screened in. So she loved to sit there, and her dog Tippy would come up with her. So she would just talk to her dog. She would clean her rifles. And, for a woman at the tower alone, she always had her rifle. And, that was important to her. So she would just get her rifle cleaned, just do the things that were normal to her. And also on this property, she did have a very small horse shelter where she would have one, sometimes two horses here when she would ride them up. And they had just enough room where they could eat, move around a little bit, and get out of the weather. So there's just a lot of memories here, and so many things that she loved about this whole place: the tower, the woods, the hunting, the cabin. Friends would come and visit her occasionally, and this to Helen was like her palace.
Some of my fondest memories in the 70s are when my brother built his house. He had a nice little A-frame down just as you turn in on Fire Tower Road. And he would, of course, enlist the entire family to come up and help him work on this house. And we'd help clear the land and things like that, and help paint when the house was ready to be done. And then as our break, we'd walk all the way down Fire Tower Road and come down here to see the fire tower. Now, at that time, everything was completely closed off, and it had not been restored at that point. But that didn't really keep us from not going up the road and going to the base of the tower.
So the fire tower opened for the first time in 1924, and I'm sure that it was just an amazing fire tower for this area, and Grafton was so proud to have it here. The fire tower closed in 1972. And I remember my grandmother was so sad when the fire tower closed. And what happened is, little by little, people would come up, and there was, a small amount of destruction done. But there was always a happy ending. In 2012, the fire tower was given a facelift. They came in, they redid the steps, they put some paint on it, they took off any graffiti that was on it, and she was actually a part of that. They had a grand opening with some of the folks from Rensselaer County, some people from the that rebuild fire towers. It was just so many people with all different backgrounds. And I remember her smiling from ear to ear, because the fire tower, as she saw it, it was back, it was fixed, people were taking care of it, and that's all she wanted to see. She just wanted to know it was being taken care of. So the grand opening was a huge day for her, and she loved the entire event.
Helen is long since gone, but her memory, or my memories of her, are very beautiful and interesting. And as I get older, I realize that she was a starting point for a lot of other young girls and inspiration.
We have a summer house that my sister lives in up here in Grafton. So our family's been up here since probably the late 1800s in one shape or another. And the interesting thing was, back in the 30s and 40s, my grandfather ran a gin mill up here where my sister lives, and all these guys knew my grandfather. So it was really interesting to listen to their stories about when they were young, hanging out at my grandfather's bar. And we watched this place be built. When I was a kid, we used to go down to the north end of Long Pond Road. There was a lady that lived down there with her husband, Sally Walker. There was a big house where the Clevis toilet is now, and you would have to bang on the door and ask permission because all around these ponds was all private property. And we were very nervous about, they talked about Governor Rockefeller coming in and buying up all of Grafton and making it into this giant place. They were going to make a big golf course on this east side of Long Pond Road. It was going to be an 18-hole golf course. There was going to be camping at the north end of Long Pond Road. Another beach up there. They were going to have this beach. We watched them build the beach. We used to fish down there. They would be blasting the rock, and you would see these giant columns of dirt fly up in the air and then hear the rumble of thunder. But it was them blasting to make the beach. I think this beach is probably the biggest beach in eastern Rensselaer, or eastern New York, quarter-mile long. It was pretty crazy. And so there was a Stack Camp, Ross Camp. There's a bunch of camps around that eventually got burned. Mill Pond, Second Pond. The Stone House was on Second Pond where the access area is now with that driveway. That was a beautiful stone house that they took out. So it states should have kept these places, but they didn't, and that was the thing to do, was to get rid of them and make it more natural, I guess, or whatever. The interesting thing is I live at Averill Park, and there's 5 lakes at Averill Park. And this would have been a very different place had the state not purchased all the property and condemned it and, did their programs up here, because where I live, I can't get on any of the ponds. There's only one, Glass Lake, and it has parking for 4 cars. And all this property here, nobody would be on because would be able to access any of this property, because in my mind, it would be all $1 million houses with people from New York or someplace else where they had a lot of money. And the townspeople wouldn't be in here anymore. Today they have access.
I'm Judy Geise. My dad and Mom owned a place in Grafton. His name was Paul J. Walz. It turned out that they bought the place in the land in about 1964. We came up here in the summer because we lived in the city in Troy, and we spent the summers up here, my brother and I, and my parents would come after work, up in the evening. When we came up to Grafton, you would come up Route 2, there were not all the homes, like there is. It wasn't as populated as it is now. You stayed on Route 2 and you came up into the village at the 4 corners. There was 2 little stores. There was the store that's there, but it was much smaller. And then there was one across the road next to the church. I think that's a Methodist church. You came up to the 4 corners and you took a left and you drove in. The road was dirt coming in. You went past the first dike, what we used to call the first dike. And then you kept going past that, and then you stopped. There was a T. You turned left. We went in probably to get to our camp about a mile, and then you went a little further and you came, to the homes, Granville Hicks, and then he had neighbors and stuff. But the road was only, there was one other camp that we went by, so it was very isolated, where we were. My father liked that. My father grew up in Manhattan and was in the Merchant Marines in World War II. Up in the North Sea is a lot of where, and he was in danger a lot because he was a Merchant Marine. The Germans were really after them to knock out the supplies they were carrying. And he always said to my mother, he had met my mother, she was a nurse. They hadn't married until after the war, but he met my mother and said, I always want to own a place on the lake. We had a place that was a little bit away from the lake. You had to walk through the woods, and when it came down on the beach, and the beach was all rocks then, there was no sand. But the water was pristine. And my father couldn't believe when they came in and did eminent domain. So here we are in Grafton with a great place that we really enjoyed. And then they come through and say, we're taking it. So our land was made into the beach, the Grafton Beach, the state park. They bought up other lakes. They bought up 5 lakes, the land around 5 lakes. Every weekend that we were here, there were parties, at the camp and down at the water. I had my high school, I graduated from Catholic High in '65, and I had my high school party on that beach. And my parents had all of our friends and everything at the camp. We had a barbecue, and it was great. It was good. Yeah. My father was friends with the ranger, and he, made my father feel good for the things that he said, to him and everything that, we gave up, and a lot of people are enjoying it. My father was not bitter, like I said previously, was not bitter about it. He was bitter right when they were doing eminent domain in the 60s. As time went on, and then he bought the other place on the lake. That helped. So my parents ended up investing in another lake up here in Grafton that they did not do eminent domain with. So I have a place, my husband and I have a place, with lake frontage. Like I said, there were not a lot of camps on this even on the other side of the lake. There were only a few camps over there. And you can still see some of the remnants of the buildings, on the other side of Long Pond. Well, I came to a shower that was, they had hired one of the pavilions, and that was very nice, and lots of people were here. They've done a good job at keeping the forest like it is, and was. It was very heavy, with forestry. But, this is fabulous, the way they've done it over here. It's for the good of a lot of people. I'm a registered nurse, so I deal with the public. And this makes a lot of people happy coming up here.
Hi, my name is Dorothy Surprise. I grew up as a Kaschak, and my Uncle Ted had a camp here. It looked much different back then, which was well over 50 years ago, but not saying how long ago it was. And we would come down to access it. The camp was here. We'd come down actually the trail was an old road, and it's actually now the parking lot for the trail system on the west side of Shaver Pond. This is the original road that we went to my uncle's camp on, and you'll notice that it'll go right down to the other camps and to his spot. But none of this was here, of course, and it was blueberries. This trail was the original road down to my uncle's camp, along with other camps. And as a kid, this was quite an adventure to come down in here. It was through the woods, and it was really rocky, and we kind of had a lot of fun. It was almost like what it is, a four-wheeling right now, but we did it in a station wagon. My uncle's camp was right here, and our beautiful view of the lake. Of course, there's much more trees here now than there were back then. Every weekend, my mom and my dad and my brother, my cousin, we'd all meet up here, and we would come up and play. We, of course, had the lake that we loved to play in, and it was, if I remember correctly, it was a long time ago, it was a two-story, it was gray, it was on piers, and I remember having a kitchen in there, and lots of places to sleep, but it was not sort of like bedrooms. It was more like a bunkhouse type of thing. We'll take a walk down, and I'll show you what my playground used to be like when I was younger, and it was a wonderful playground. Okay, this spot was really kind of dear to all of us kids, my brother, my cousin, and I. Sometimes we would come up with my aunt and uncle by ourselves without our parents, and we'd sit down here and have campfires. So we would be up to all hours, and I remember my aunt and uncle saying, just be careful with the fire, and they would leave 10 and 12-year-old at that time by the campfire. But we would have a great time. We'd scare each other with stories because the boys always liked trying to scare me. We used to have our little chairs and sit on the ground and just enjoy it. If I remember correctly, it was built up a lot more, and it had a chimney. So it wasn't just this square rectangle fire pit. It looked more like an old type fireplace. When I was younger, I remember there were lots of camps around here, not too many, but I do remember there was actually one right up here, not too far from my uncle's camp. And we were all very sad when the state came in and purchased all the properties because we felt we were losing our little private playground. I personally believe that it was all for the best because we wouldn't have it now if the state didn't come and make it a park, because I'm sure my uncle would have sold his little piece of property and somebody would have built a nice big beautiful house there and closed off the lake. It's the same with everybody else. So I still get to enjoy my childhood favorite playground. So it doesn't bother me. I do remember being very sad when we were told that it was happening, but being so young, you just didn't really realize the good things that were going to come of it. Behind me here is remnants of an old camp. You can see that they are concrete, and they're small camps. They weren't these huge camps that we associate now, but that's why they're still here, is because they're concrete. I believe my uncles were wood. They were logs. They would cut down a tree and make them a log, so that's why we cannot find the remnants of his camp any longer. So this path really hasn't changed in all these years. It's still rocky and wet, and you had to watch your step to get down here, but we had a great time. And I was when I look back up, I'm going, yeah, we used to run up and down this, not anymore. So this is was our water access. We had, like I said before, we had a canoe, and we were always out, the kids were always out on the water. We went that way to the rock over there, and we went up that way to go dig freshwater clams, and believe it or not, we used to eat them. And it was nice and sandy. We would get out and just walk around and dig them up and pick them up and put them in the kettle when we got home and steam them. Even at the young age, we would try to swim the lake. So one person would be in the canoe, and the other two of us would be swimming. As you can see, there's tons of places to play, and we had a great time.
So here on the beach, all of my 4 children had worked here at the park at one time or another. My oldest daughter didn't work for the state park. She worked for the town doing swimming lessons, which was at the end of the beach here. All the ladies in town brought the kids for swimming lessons every day, or 3 days a week, I think it was. So they were here all day. And my middle daughter started out cleaning bathrooms and working in the boathouse over here on this side. My youngest daughter was working the concession stands, and that's how she started working. She wasn't working actually for the state, but for whoever was running the concession stands. And my son was a lifeguard here for 14 years. After we moved into town, my wife and I started skating First Pond, and of course there were no lights or anything like that. She was sitting on one of the ice floes one time, and the whole thing started moving on her. So she was a little scared about that. For the most part, after Labor Day, the park pretty much closed up for 9 months. There wasn't much going on in the wintertime. Pretty much the park was kind of dead. And that all stopped when a fellow came in as park manager in 1984. His name is Tom Conklin. And he had a personal motto: parks are for people. And he decided he was going to make the park a 4-season park and not just a 3-month park. So he instituted a lot of programs that are still going on now. The Winter Festival was one of Tom's ideas. Run for the Roses, he did that in coordination with the Grafton Library. So when he came into town, he'd get on his tractor in the middle of the wintertime and get all the snow off First Pond, not all of it, but just enough so the kids could come and skate. After that was done, he had hockey games there every weekend. The parking lot was full of cars, kids were skating, it was great. And the kids would sleigh ride from the hill up here. We'd station in the dump by the spillway so they wouldn't go over, and they would all shoot into the ice from the ride down. So they would skate and they would sleigh ride, and then we had Tom put the lights on, so people were even enjoying themselves in the at night, you know, and so it was very popular, especially with the kids. And so he took that one step further. The next year he had the Winter Festival, and that first year was probably one of the best I've ever seen because we had a lot of snow. It was cold, there was a lot of ice on the ponds, and when you were here for those 2 days, it looked like a Winter Olympics with the snow coming down, people cross-country skiing. It was quite something. This also was a great spot for any kind of training that was done. I know when I was with the rescue squad, we did an ice rescue training out here, and they cut a hole in the ice, and that particular winter was very, very cold, and it was I think they said there was 27 inches of ice on the lake, and put a victim in a dry suit, and we had to get into another dry suit, go across the ice, roll to the hole, go over the top of the victim with a rope, put the rope around myself and the victim, and then we're pulled out. So that was a rescue that we did during one of the winter festivals. Another great program that Tom brought here was called a Run for the Roses, and it was a race through the town and through the park. And at the end, the finish line, you would get a rose. I know I was at the finish line with the ambulance more than a few times, and had people collapse in my arms because it was just too much of a race with the hills around here. Really took you could see their legs going to rubber as they trying to make the final 100 yards. Unfortunately, he passed on, a dear friend that was gone too soon. He certainly left his legacy here at Grafton Lakes State Park.
Hi, my name is Conklin. I grew up in Grafton State Park, and everyone knows me as Belle. Tom Conklin was my father. I'm his youngest daughter. He was the manager here at Grafton State Park for 24 years, and I grew up here from when I was a little baby till I was about 20. So my dad, Tom Conklin, also started up the Run for the Roses 5K race. So it would start here, right at the entrance to the beach parking lot, and it would go through the town of Grafton, and you could always start seeing when people were rounding the end back at where the entrance is. My dad ran it every single year, but we used the word ran very loosely. It was more of a fast stroll jog, but he did it every single year, and his goal was to just not be last. And I think for the most part, I think he was the second to last every time. But I loved supporting him. I'm not sure how much he loved it though, because once I saw him kind of come down that road, I would run right up to him and I'd run the rest with him, cheering him on. I thought I was being supportive, but I learned many times that he thought I was just being annoying, because he was the one who ran 3.25 miles in August in Grafton, which was very, very hot, and he just did the uphill leg of the race. So I would always go, Dad, like, you can do it, go faster. Sorry, Dad, but you'd usually see him around here going, so, and we always had fun watching him do the race. I also ran it a couple times. A couple times I was pretty good. A couple times I may have been right in front of my dad, third to last. I do plan on doing it again this year. It's something that I like to do now more so than ever in memory of my father. So we're at Mill Pond, what I grew up calling First Pond. It was really peaceful most of the time. I would go kind of after the visitors were here. I'd sit at those picnic tables. My mom and I would come collect newts. That was always really fun for me when I was little. But as I got older, I would come and this, I'm not sure what you call it, but it turns into this little waterfall down there. And I would just walk around in it. A couple times I'd pick up some litter, but it was, the sound that it made was really peaceful. So on the other side of First Pond, as the road kind of winds around towards Second Pond, somewhere in between there was my secret hiding spot. It was just a little tiny path that you could barely tell was a path. And if you go up it, it was just this empty field with this giant pretty tree. But I never told a soul about where it was. One of the memories that I feel is long forgotten is at this far end of the beach, Grafton State Park lifeguards, Monroe State Park lifeguards, Thatcher Park when they had a pool, I believe, Saratoga, and Minekill. They alternated the years, and when it was Grafton's turn to host the lifeguard competitions, it was here. And growing up, watching those was probably the highlight of my summer. At one point, my brother was a lifeguard at Saratoga, so that also was kind of cool to watch him. But they would do races in the water, on the sand. They'd have to rescue their partners. Just a lot of fun stuff at the lifeguard competitions. But my most favorite thing growing up was the winter festival that he made. They had snowmobiling, snowshoeing, ice sculpture contests, snow sculpture, all this super fun stuff, literally right in my backyard growing up, because I was blessed to grow up in the state park. But my brother and his best friend, Crystal Lane, they used to play pond hockey all the time out here. And I wanted to be cool like my brother Scott and his best friend. So I would come out here and try to play with them, but I never really got the hang of it. But I would love to come out here with my brother and try to be cool with him. If for some reason the pond was not frozen in time for the Winter Fest, my dad started spraying the parking lot, flooding it with water so that it would freeze, and so that the Winter Fest and all of the local hockey players could come and skate on the parking lot. All year round, growing up in this park was just phenomenal. I was very blessed.
My name is Ira Share. We moved into Petersburg in 1986, right after we were married. I taught at Tamarack Elementary School for many, many years, and we started coming to the park immediately. We were cross-country skiers when we moved into the area, and hikers and canoers and kayakers, and we fished and sailed up here many, many times on pretty much all the lakes and ponds, including Dunham Reservoir across the road. Some particular momentous times in this park were spring skis. The last of the snow was up here. So on one adventure, you would bump into a few people up here, and nothing but smiles on their faces because they knew it was the last snow. One time I bumped into the park manager, Tom Conklin, and he was fully dressed in his wool skiing outfit, and he was skiing around Mill Pond, putting up the last of the new trail signs for that year. And it was kind of fun bumping into him on one of those days. Another time was, I was mountain biking around Long Pond, and I was by myself. I looked off about halfway around the lake. It's pretty technical. I looked off to the right and noticed toward the lake that it was getting kind of smoky in there. And I kept going a little bit further, and I saw someone running around by the shore, and he waved me over and said, "Help, help, help." It happened to be a friend of mine who had his camelback on and was trying to douse out a fire that he was riding by. The story was, a few days earlier, someone had made a campfire, and it spread through the roots underground, came up somewhere else. So the two of us, with water bottles and camelbacks, were trying to put out a fire. It was out of our hands at that point. He was a much better mountain biker than me, so he raced back to the beach, called the fire department. Sirens went off. They came over by foot, they came over by boat, and with equipment, and put that fire out. It was pretty crazy.
Hi, I'm Kathy Share. I'm married to Ira Share, but I went to college at the College of St. Rose in Albany, and certain times of the year, especially in the spring, we would look forward to finding a beach, and we'd all pile into a car, and a whole bunch of us would come out here to Grafton State Park and be beach blanket bunnies for a day, and then go back and act as if we had been to Aruba for the whole, spring break. I started taking up running after my first baby was born, my first son, and so when there was the Run for the Roses, I wasn't a huge competitor, but I thought, oh, this would be great. I did the Freihoppers and I would do the Run for the Roses. Those were my two staples. Every year when I would run with my husband, with Ike, we would start out and he'd say, "We're just going to take it easy. We're just going to have a good time." And all of a sudden it would be, "Let's catch up with that guy. Hurry up, let's go. You can pick up the pace. Hurry! What's taking you so long? You can do it, girl." And so year after year, I would put myself through this. At least in the Freihoppers, there's no husband there. And the one year, I did end up coming in second overall, which startled most of us. But it was nice to know that I could do it, and that's the last time that happened. One year, I discovered that I didn't have the family holiday photo card, and I was getting desperate because it was getting late in the year. So I said, "I know, come on guys," and I bundled them up, and we went, and I drove them up, and we hiked up to Fire Tower, and I said, "Okay, let's climb up there, I'm gonna take some pictures." They were both looked at me as if, "Are you mad? I'm not going up there. It's windy, it's cold." I said, "Get up there." So we walked up Fire Tower. I got them as high as I could. And when we got there, I said, "Okay, stand right here and smile." And it was a great picture. The smiles look a little forced, like, "I'm gonna do this because if I don't, I won't be able to get out of here." And so we had our beautiful family picture, which I pull out every once in a while to show them how much love we have.
One winter, our neighbor Dave, and he talked us into doing the polar plunge to raise money for an organization that he was working for. So we signed up, we put on our Hawaiian shirts, and we came up here that day, and the state police dive team was here, and they cut a big square in the ice, and we did our thing. It was our first and only one, and we were kind of rookies at it. Most people that had done it before had the right gear and slippers and bathrobes and towels and all that. We just had a towel. So one day we were sailing on Long Pond, and it was a very windy day, and on our sailfish. So we were flying toward the beach one day.
We were tacking a little bit, which really showed off our brand new sail at a really great advantage. So we could hear little children on, the beach was crowded. For good reason, it was a beautiful day. And so we could hear kids out on the beach going, "Look at that, what is that?" And when we heard that, we were looking around going, "What is it? Is there something behind us?" But it was us. I think they thought, wow, it's like seeing, a big balloon go by.
Yeah.
That's what our sail looked like. It was and it was, like I said, a perfect day for it.
Hi, my name's Dan O'Brien, and I live in Grafton. In fact, I live right adjacent to the park and have been very fortunate to have the park in my backyard. What I'd like to talk about is another anniversary that's coming this July, the 26th year anniversary of the 1995 Derecho that occurred on July 15th, the morning just before 7 o'clock. And in fact, behind me here, you can see some of the impact. We're looking at a blowdown that has now grown over 26 years later. Now this event is also a special anniversary for me and my wife, because on the Friday afternoon of July 14th, we closed the property closing on our house, our first home. That afternoon, we handed the keys and we moved in that night. Unbeknownst, about 4 a.m. in the morning, a derecho, I'm not a meteorologist, but it's a long line of straight line winds with almost hurricane force speeds. And that came down through New York State. It was a very significant meteorological event that caused widespread damage throughout much of New York State. Large areas of the Adirondacks were blown down. But Grafton Lakes State Park forests were also impacted. In fact, some of the strongest cells came right through here. We're on the Mill Pond trail that goes around Mill Pond. This is kind of a landmark here, this stream drainage, and this is the direction, and you can see maybe in the background some of the trees ripped up, the root systems being pulled up there. So we're just a short stone's throw from the north eastern end of the pond. And what we're seeing here is really just a portion. We'll take a little walk around, but it runs from basically Mill Pond up for about a quarter of a mile and maybe about 100 yards wide, a swath that knocked down all these trees. Now, that next morning at 7 o'clock, or just before 7 o'clock, the curtains started to blow crazy. We had the windows open because it had been such a hot night, and had no idea of just the significance of what was passing through. It passed really quickly. I went outside, and fortunately no trees down on the house, but of course in the summertime, many branches and leaves all over. And I took a walk, and I came down around Mill Pond Trail, and I came upon this blowdown area within an hour of the time that the storm had come through. And it was impressive. And you'll see as we walk around, just the force of that winds. There was no speed recording right here, but it probably was close to 100 miles an hour, I would guess, maybe 90 to 100 miles an hour. Now here in the swamp area, I think perhaps the trees were a little bit more vulnerable with the wetness of the soils, but you'll see as we move up through along the ridges, the trees continued to get blown down. So behind me here are trees that went down, and in this case of the tree further one away, landed on a large boulder. One of the interesting things of the trees is to watch their decaying process and the moss and what can grow on top of them. But again, it's over 26 years, so we're into our 26 years of this tree being down. Not only have the trees been blown down, but you'll see that many trees have then sprung up from the root systems that have been ripped up. In this case, a yellow birch. So I look at that and say, there's a 26-year-old yellow birch. This tree is an interesting case. As you can see by its size, it survived the derecho, unlike some of the other hemlocks comparable size nearby. And I'm suspecting that what might have helped save this tree is this giant gray wacky boulder off to my left that is planted up, and the roots are up and underneath this rock. And I think that that helped provide an anchor for that tree, is my guess. For me, when I come out here, and it's a very visual example of the time for me in Grafton, right down to the same day. This has happened, so, you know, I look at this and it tells me, Dan, this is how long you've been living in Grafton. So it's an anniversary for me as well.
So the 50th anniversary is 71. It took them, yes, it took them 2 or 3 years to develop all of this. But they did a great job, you know, and like I said, it's for the good of everybody.
It was amazing to have this kind of expanse and have that kind of the sandy areas and then the small ponds here to do the fishing and the hikes around. Just opened up a whole new world that hadn't really realized that all this was up here.
Winter up here is definitely worth getting out here and exploring and adventuring and maybe doing some things that you've never done before.
I'm truly blessed. I know that sounds like one of those hokey deals, but I worked here early. The people I worked with made a big difference in my life as far as my attitude. You know, we try to make it better for everybody.
And for all those who grow up near the park, don't take it for granted, because it is beautiful, a lot of fun stuff to do, and a lot of peace and tranquility too. So everybody utilize your local state parks, because it's pretty cool.
I certainly am proud of the Grafton Park and proud to be from Grafton.
Test 1 2, test 1 2. These are the times that try men's souls.
Here for about 21 years, I believe, and we lived the house.
Are we freewheeling, or do you have a teleprompter for Buzz?
Well, histories. I'd like to show you another anniversary. That'll be this July, the 31st anniversary. Excuse me. So.
Just so we have a plan.
Okay, you go first, and
Okay.
then I'll go.
All right. So just want to kind of start with my name and when we worked here, and then let you do that, and then we'll talk a little bit. Okay.
All the special effects that go into it. Like, half the time the actors aren't doing anything.
So the fire tower opened in 1942. Nope,